Friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, Texas, where the sun cast long shadows over manicured lawns and the most significant drama usually revolved around high school football games, Janine Colson took her usual evening stroll with her terrier, Scout. The familiar cracked sidewalks and neatly trimmed hedges felt like home, but as she turned the corner onto her street, a sense of unease washed over her. Two figures stood rigidly by her driveway, their presence slicing through the calm of the evening. Harold Vance and Cynthia Rowe, both long-standing members of the Homeowners Association, HOA, were waiting for her. Janine's stomach twisted. She hadn't even reached her porch, and their expressions told her this encounter would not be friendly. "Mrs. Colson," Harold called out, his voice sharp and clipped. "We need to talk about that banner on your lawn." Janine adjusted Scout's leash, wishing she could simply walk past them. "It's a fall banner, pumpkins, leaves, nothing offensive." Cynthia stepped forward, her clipboard clutched tightly in her manicured hands. "It violates the association's seasonal decor rules, Section 12, Paragraph 4. You should know that by now." Janine exhaled slowly, her patience wearing thin. "I've lived here for 10 years. People put up everything from inflatable turkeys to 10-foot Santas, and you've never said a word." "That's different," Harold snapped, his eyes narrowing. "Yours wasn't approved." The tension hung thick in the air as Janine glanced at her door, just a few yards away. The thought of brushing past them made her heart race. "Look," she said, her voice steady, "I'm not taking it down. It's staying right where it is." Harold's jaw clenched, and he stepped closer, his shadow looming over her driveway like a threat. "That's not how this works." Janine's pulse quickened as she felt the confrontation escalate. "I'm going inside my house, Harold. Move." Then it happened, quick and ugly. Harold shoved her shoulder, just enough to knock her off balance and send Scout barking in alarm. Fear raced through Janine's chest as she staggered back, catching herself. "Don't touch me," she shouted, her voice sharp and furious. The shout carried across the lawn, past the hedges, and straight into the open window of their home, where Anthony Colson, a retired Navy SEAL, was on the phone with a teammate. He paused mid-sentence, recognizing the tone of Janine's voice. "Fear, hold on," he said, pushing back his chair and striding to the door. He opened it calmly, but his heart raced as he stepped into the golden light of the driveway. For the first time, Harold's expression faltered. "Is there a problem here?" Anthony's voice was low and firm, carrying authority without needing to raise it. Janine's hand shook slightly on the leash. "He shoved me," she said, her voice trembling. Anthony's eyes locked onto Harold, scanning every detail, the clenched fists, the tight jaw, the misplaced confidence of a man who thought power came from titles. "I'm only going to ask once," he said, his tone steady as stone. "Step back." The air shifted. Neighbors peeking through curtains felt it. Cynthia felt it too, her grip on the clipboard tightening. Even Harold, though pride kept him rooted, felt the weight of Anthony's presence. "Don't twist this," Harold said, forcing a laugh that came out jagged. "Your wife got physical with me first. I was just defending myself." "That's a lie." Janine shot back. "You shoved me because I wouldn't take down a banner." Anthony's gaze never wavered. "I heard her. I know exactly what happened. Now move out of the way." Cynthia, finally finding her voice, interjected, "Anthony, let's not escalate this. Harold was just enforcing HOA rules. Responsibility doesn't give him the right to put his hands on my wife," Anthony replied, his voice calm but resolute. Harold's face flushed red. "This is exactly the problem. People like you think the rules don't apply." "Standards don't mean shoving a woman in her own driveway," Anthony countered. "You crossed the line." For the first time, Harold's bravado cracked. He glanced at Cynthia, expecting backup, but she looked uneasy, her lips pressed tight. "Maybe we should just file a notice," she said softly, almost pleading, but Harold wasn't listening. "If you put your hands on me, Colson, I'll sue you for assault." Anthony shook his head slowly. I don't need to touch you. I just need you to leave my wife alone. He turned slightly toward Janine, his voice gentler. Go inside, sweetheart. I'll handle this. But Janine stood her ground, her shoulders still aching from the shove. No, I'm not hiding in my house, not after what he did. Anthony looked at her, and in that brief glance, years of partnership shone through. He didn't argue. Across the street, a neighbor muttered to another, Did you see that? He shoved her. I saw it clear as day. The murmur grew, phones tilted upward, and the moment was no longer private. It was a stage. Realizing the crowd wasn't on his side, Harold lowered his voice, but the venom remained. This neighborhood has standards. Some of us actually care about maintaining them. Anthony took a step forward, closing the space between them. Standards don't mean intimidation. You crossed the line. With a final scowl, Harold turned on his heel, retreating with Cynthia hurriedly following. As they left, Janine exhaled for the first time in minutes, her knees weak but her resolve burning stronger than ever. The next morning, the Texas sun barely climbed over the rooftops when Anthony sat at the kitchen table, staring into a mug of black coffee. Janine moved quietly around him, her shoulder sore from the shove, her mind replaying every second of the night before. I still can't believe he put his hands on me, she said, lowering herself into the chair across from him. In front of everybody, like I was some kind of problem to shove out of the way. Anthony rubbed his jaw, silent at first. He won't touch you again, he said finally, his tone calm and reassuring. Janine let out a short, bitter laugh. That's the thing though. He thinks he can get away with it because he's Harold Vance, head of the HOA. He probably woke up this morning telling himself I was overreacting. Just then, Anthony's phone buzzed on the table. It was Wes Hanlon, one of his old Navy teammates. You good, brother? Wes asked, concern lacing his voice. I saw the video, he continued. People are furious. They're saying Harold shoved your wife because he thought he could get away with it. Janine looked up, startled. It's already online? Anthony put the phone on speaker. What are people saying, Wes? Half the comments are demanding Harold resign. The other half are saying HOA boards abuse power all the time, and this just proves it. But it's not just that. People are pointing out you didn't lose control. You handled it like a pro. Anthony leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. This isn't the kind of attention we want, but it's the kind you've got. As the days passed, the story of the Colsons and Harold Vance spread like wildfire. The neighborhood became a focal point for discussions about HOA overreach and the abuse of power. Anthony and Janine found themselves at the center of a storm they never anticipated, but they stood firm, united in their resolve to fight back against intimidation and injustice. And as they faced the challenges ahead, they knew they were not alone. The community was watching, and together, they would reclaim their neighborhood. The tension in Willow Creek reached a boiling point as the HOA called an emergency meeting to address the escalating situation. The community center was packed, with residents spilling out into the parking lot. News cameras lined the entrance, capturing the moment as Anthony and Janine walked in, hand in hand, ready to confront the man who had tried to intimidate them. As they took their seats, whispers filled the room. Harold sat at the front, flanked by Cynthia and other board members, his face a mask of defiance. The chairwoman, Phyllis Grant, tapped the microphone, trying to restore order. Tonight's agenda concerns recent events involving Mr. Vance and the Colson family, she announced, her voice wavering slightly under the weight of the crowd's anticipation. Harold jumped in before she could continue. Let's be clear. I was enforcing HOA guidelines when Mrs. Colson became aggressive. I acted in defense, nothing more. The crowd erupted in boos and shouts. We saw the video, someone yelled. Janine stood up, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. You shoved me, Harold. In front of neighbors, in front of my own home. Don't call that defense, call it what it was, assault. Gasps filled the room, and Anthony felt the energy shift. He rose slowly, commanding attention without raising his voice. This isn't about a banner. It's about power. When someone thinks their position lets them put hands on others, that's abuse. That's harassment. The crowd murmured in agreement, and Anthony pressed on. I won't let it stand, not for my wife, not for anyone. Harold's face turned crimson as he tried to regain control. This is slander. I've given my time, my energy, your control. Janine interjected, her voice rising. You've used this board to intimidate, not to serve. People are scared to speak up because you punish them with fines and humiliation. The tension in the room was palpable as more neighbors began to share their stories of intimidation and fear. Each testimony built upon the last, creating a wave of support for the Coulsons. Anthony felt the tide turning, and he knew they were on the brink of something monumental. But just as the momentum reached its peak, Harold's voice cut through the noise. You think you've won? You haven't seen the last of me. Janine stood tall beside Anthony, her resolve unwavering. No, Harold. The neighborhood has finally seen the real you. As Harold stormed out, cameras followed, capturing the moment of triumph for the Coulsons. The crowd erupted in applause, a collective sigh of relief washing over them. But Anthony knew this was just the beginning. The fight for accountability was far from over. As the days turned into weeks, the Coulsons found themselves at the center of a national conversation about HOA abuses and community power dynamics. News outlets picked up the story, and social media buzzed with discussions about the incident. Anthony and Janine became symbols of resistance, inspiring others to stand up against intimidation. But with the spotlight came scrutiny. Harold, refusing to back down, began rallying his supporters, painting himself as the victim of a smear campaign. He spread rumors and misinformation, trying to regain control over the narrative. One evening, as Anthony and Janine sat at their kitchen table, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on them. He's not going to stop, Janine said, her voice tinged with worry. He's trying to turn everyone against us. Anthony nodded, his expression serious. We need to stay focused. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who's been bullied by him. As they prepared for the next HOA meeting, the tension in the air was thick with anticipation. They knew they had to confront Harold again, but this time, they were armed with the support of their community. The night of the meeting arrived, and the community center was overflowing with residents eager to voice their concerns. Anthony and Janine took their seats, ready to stand their ground. The atmosphere crackled with energy as neighbors shared their stories of intimidation and fear, each voice adding to the chorus of dissent against Harold's reign. When it was finally their turn to speak, Anthony stood tall, his voice steady and commanding. This isn't just about a banner or a single incident. It's about the culture of fear that Harold has fostered in this community. We deserve better. The crowd erupted in applause, and Anthony felt a surge of hope. They were no longer alone in this fight. Together, they were reclaiming their neighborhood. But just as the momentum reached its peak, Harold's voice cut through the noise. You think you've won? You haven't seen the last of me. Janine stood tall beside Anthony, her resolve unwavering. No, Harold. The neighborhood has finally seen the real you. As Harold stormed out, cameras followed, capturing the moment of triumph for the Coulsons. The crowd erupted in applause, a collective sigh of relief washing over them. But Anthony knew this was just the beginning. The fight for accountability was far from over. As the meeting concluded, the Coulsons felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had ignited a fire within their community, and together, they would continue to stand against intimidation and injustice. But as they left the community center, Anthony couldn't shake the feeling that Harold was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike back. The battle was far from over, and the Coulsons were ready to face whatever came next. Do you want to know the fate of the heroes? Please post part 2. Subscribe to the channel and continue watching. Your opinion and support are important to me. Leave it in the comments. Thank you.